My biggest takeaway podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to My Biggest Takeaway podcast. I have an old friend, actually a high school friend, and I believe we actually goes even back further than that through Rec League. But a good friend of mine, Mr. Colin Wayne. Thank you so much for being on, man. It's been a wild ride how our lives have essentially gone in two different directions, but also kind of very similar at the same time. Um, I've always told people like this man's had more success and sold more shit than anybody that I can imagine. And if I took multiple people, put them together, you've been able to achieve some things that are really incredible. And I'm going to start off by saying this. We have a mutual guy that we know, Mr. Matt Smoyak. And he said to me, he was like, whenever I was having him help me work on some things inside Coffee for Cardio when we were growing, is I wasn't afraid. And he was like, man, you were like Colin. You were just dumb enough to be successful
Yeah.
because you're willing to risk it. You're willing to go for it. And I feel like your life has been nothing but just putting it on the table and be like, what can we do? And those plaques behind you say it all. But actually, those are minute in what you've actually been able to accomplish, man. So I'm
I
honored to have you
appreciate
on.
that. Yeah, Dan, it's an honor to be here. And you talked about like similar paths from, playing ball together growing up and, middle school days to, doing the fitness modeling thing. When I first started and you started, both from Alabama, both launched successful e-commerce brands and now transitioning into the education and software space. So very similar track, and then as well as like just working out in general, a passion for fitness, working with shreds together. So it's a really cool synergy. I'm excited for today's show, and look forward to you coming back to Alabama and to hang out. So
Well, I don't know how much I will be living in Alabama, but I do plan on trying to do some more visiting. Um, so let's wind it on back, man. So you graduated, went into the military,
dropped out of
dropped
high school.
out.
Yeah,
Did not know that.
yeah,
Wow, man, that even adds more to the story.
yeah. That's
Okay,
pretty
dropped
crazy,
out of high school. You went into the military.
right?
All right, we had basically a rocket explode while you're in the gym.
Yeah.
Right, got hit with shrapnel. Um, and then where does your life go from there? Because obviously
So
it's a pretty traumatic event. So
less
what
than a
was going through
year
your
after
mind in that
getting.
process?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, brother. But
I'm saying, mhm.
less than a year after getting blown up in a gym in Afghanistan, the Paktika province, I was on the cover of Iron Man magazine. And so prior to that, I spent about 6 months of therapy. So I had shrapnel that went all the way through my leg, and then L1 through L3 nerve damage in my back. So I had a lumbar block fusion surgery, and then permanent tinnitus in my left ear. And so I was doing different therapy sessions, but then as soon as I could, like, because the biggest thing was the therapy for my leg, because shrapnel went all the way through it, and it like missed my basically my shin bone by centimeters. And so like imagine like having one, they had to like scrape the fascia, and it was so painful. And then also like learning to re-walk, like moving your ankle back and forth, and all the tendons that got ripped out of there. And you can see like the entrance wound is pretty small, but the exit's a lot bigger. It's probably 3 or 4 times the size. And how much like ligaments and everything else had just got torn. And so you mentioned kind of at the intro, like it's kind of blind faith and taking something and jumping in with both feet and hoping you swim. It's very similar approach of like, I take a setback of like most people would be afraid of the gym. They almost got killed there, but I turn it into kind of a catalyst. And so similarly, like when I started Redline Steel, the home decor brand, um, I started it because of just wanting to be a consumer, and then it turned into consulting. Saw a market opportunity, went after it, was going to partner with somebody, and he wanted to renegotiate this basically the day of signing. And so it lit a fire instinctively. And I didn't know shit about manufacturing. I didn't know any, like, this is a plus screwdriver. I am not a handy person. And so, like, it was, but it never scared me, bro. Like, I wanted to prove a point that this person fucked up, and I don't ever want to say it. I want him to just read about it. And so kind of speak without speaking. And that's kind of been kind of my philosophy on a lot of things, is like, I'll just stay quiet and I'm going to grind and do everything that I can possible. And I believe in myself enough where if I dedicate, it's going to be 100%. And I think kind of a catalyst of the success has been brought on by not getting distracted by so many different things that are out there. That knowing, kind of like, I call it the 3Ds: the distance, direction, and distractions. And first off, knowing what kind of like short, midterm, long-term goals are. Because if you don't have that, there's no sense of direction on which way is the right way. And so you get distracted by opportunities that come in that truly aren't opportunities. They're distractions from what that short-term goal is. And they could actually be rewarding, but is it going to bring you closer to that goal, whatever that is? And so I think that that's the world we live in. There's so many topics about, oh, you need all of this, 7 sources of income. So people will start all these different side hustles and grinds, and but they don't actually move the needle because they're not dedicating themselves 100% to that one thing, where all we have is time. And time, you can maximize it up to that 24-hour benchmark. Everybody has to sleep. So what are you going to do? Like, I think that's kind of the misconception, is you can't replicate yourself. So if you want 7 streams of income, build one extreme, like, well enough where it can become passive, and you can take that income, put it into something else. Or you can keep grinding the way you are right now and work, and get nowhere. Like, there's so many people that live paycheck to paycheck, and it's a real thing, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's just reassessing where you're at and really honing in that focus. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I find that I was a person that was like the jack of all trades, never really great at one thing, or have multiple businesses. It's like, well, you can't grow coffee and an agency to the best of their abilities, right? You can't do both, right? You only have so many hours in a day, right? And so I think that really hits home with me, because over the years, I've started to say no more and more and more and more. And I focus on one thing and one thing only. And every now and then I'll catch myself going shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
And have to go, like, wait a minute, that's quick cash. That doesn't help the big picture. Turn that down.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Because sometimes we think like, I need to do multiple things. And I've heard other people say that as well. And you solidifying it, it's like, no, you need to do, like, the average millionaire has 7 streams of income. Yes. They didn't become a millionaire through 7 streams of income. They become a millionaire through 1, maybe 2.
Yeah.
And then they started diversifying their money once they had money. So
Yes.
they have multiple streams, but they didn't become a millionaire through multiple streams.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think that goes, unless you're just a unicorn, that's likely the approach that so many others that have had success have had to go through. Like, it's that one thing that took off, they had an exit. Because here's the reality: a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't see substantial cash flow until you exit a business. So that's kind of like a big learning takeaway for me in the actual, like, manufacturing space. Because I was in a weird space, like manufacturing and fulfillment and e-com, and we did some B2B, but like, it's a unique business model. So, like, going and getting a formal valuation, um, it was challenging because of how much growth and capital that's needed to infuse into the business to keep it sustaining, buying $1 million lasers. And at one point, we had 10 lasers at one point. And then automation, powder coat conveyor systems that capture and reclaim the powder, and auto spray. And you're talking millions of dollars in CapEx, but you're not really rewarded back into what that is. Even at like there is no multiples on that. So on the actual equipment. Like you're paid at a depreciating value of what that did. And it brought you some return. But when you look at software that doesn't even sell at a EBITDA multiple, so EBITDA is earnings before interest, deficit, taxes, and assets. And so when you look at that multiple, like this is, you put so much time, effort, energy into this one thing that can only yield X result. And so, unless you are a pioneer and like you've created something complete blue ocean and you can kind of build a very high EBITDA, look at something else. And like, what I started looking at was market caps and capitalization rate tables of like on a global scale. So, like, when I looked at home signage, and it could be any nexus of like, could be canvas, steel, aluminum, any type of deposit, excluding portraits. It was a $542.7 billion annual revenue. And when I looked at business signage or corporate signage, those could be like ADA signs and signs that's on the outside of a building, like anything that has to do with corporate signage. It was $142.6 billion a year global business. Massive difference, right? 542.7 million versus 140 plus billion-dollar. I mean, it's just a significant difference. I've got a diagram I'll share with you if you want to put it up on the screen. But like, it really paints a picture of like how big are these like this market opportunity that you're going after. And if you don't know, you can be naive to it. I didn't know. I didn't look up all of that until hell, almost 7 years into the business. And so that's like, it would have been a great kind of understanding of if you're building with the intent to exit, or are you building just to build and it's fun and you want to be your own, entrepreneur, because it's
Sure.
not an easy life. It's challenging. And this is my advice for somebody out there listening right now is like, how well do you deal under pressure? And if
Mm,
the answer is, it's not well, don't even think about getting started. You need to
mm,
reshift your identity to know that you're going to get beat up hard. And really, every decision is going to lie on you. And you don't know what necessarily is the right thing or the wrong thing to do. So, what do? You move forward with the best, knowing the distance, direction, less the distractions, move forward and ensure that like you're doing in the right interest, best interest of the business. And that's what it has to be. And there's no playbook. My walk has been different than Mike's, and his, like, it would be challenging for somebody else to come in and take the exact same framework, because what worked 3, 4 years ago, or even a year ago, the market
mm,
shifts every single day. And so there isn't, and guys, like there's like my brother, for instance, he's a planner and he would have notebooks full of stuff, and it could take 2 or 3 years before he launches it because he wants to have the perfect business plan. There is no such thing as perfect, because it's going to move, it's going to shift. And the first obstacle, what are you going to do? Are you going to overcome it? Or are you going to, or is it just going to be a roadblock and you're going to be done and give up? And so that would be my advice, is those that are on the fence looking to get started, like really self-evaluate, how comfortable are you in uncomfortable situations? And can you go and sustain like years, or a year, 2 years, 3 years without personal income? What does that look like? Because it's a
mm.
real thing and it could definitely happen. And most businesses fail. But if you're naive enough, just like Mike was saying at the beginning of this podcast, you just jump in and you believe in yourself wholeheartedly. And there's nothing that can't be accomplished with just blind faith. And what I always said to myself is, God has not opened this many doors just to close them. Everything is intentional. You just have to look at it in a way of perspective. This is a this was meant to happen. This key employee that really ran operations leaves. I used to stress out. Not anymore. Not anymore. Like it's now. It's like God's going to open. Somebody else is going to come in. It's going to be even better. And I'm just going to show up the next day, give it 100%, and we're going to figure it out. Because there's no point in stressing about stuff you can't control. But what you
Mm.
can control are your thoughts, because thoughts become things.
I 100% agree with that. Last night, it's so funny you say this because I've been dealing with a lot of stress myself as I'm making some changes inside the business. As every time things change, Like change is uncomfortable in many facets, right? Especially when it comes to business. And I've been slacking on my cold plunge. And oddly enough, I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Mm.
I get in and it's like really hard. And I'm like, it finally dawned on me that I have the correlation between if I can't handle the cold temperature, then it just goes to show, look, review the last 3 weeks of your life and how have you been handling stress? Not well.
Mm.
And so for me, I put together putting myself through a stressful situation allows me to live day to day with a little bit less stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm
Yeah.
able to handle my work task whenever I can handle the water. If I can't handle the water, I can't handle my work. And so it's just, for me, it was a trigger to going, okay, get back in the water so that you can handle your day-to-day stress better. Because for me, it's basically a tracking, right? It's a KPI that says you mentally are not there today. Why not?
Right.
Have you
Yeah.
been doing hard stuff? So, and there's nothing that business, in my opinion, that's not hard.
Yeah.
Especially when you're the tip of the spear, right? Which you've been for a long time at this point. We're going to roll it back. I know for me, where we started, or where I started, there was a day that my life forever changed. And for me, that was when I took that first photo shoot with Golden,
Mm-hmm.
right? I got the photos. My buddy Frankie, which you're familiar with,
Yeah.
Frankie Guerra,
Frankie's great. Yeah.
he was my biggest hype man. I started a Facebook page and then things just kind of trickle on. It's like for me, doing the photo shoot 3 days before a bodybuilding show changed the trajectory of where I was going in life and changed my attitude and what was possible. What was the defining moment in your life?
Man, I think there's several. I mean, Golden, he played a significant role, right? I mean, like my Facebook took off because of the photo shoots, and his did too. In favor, like we all started together, and there was a
Absolutely.
handful of us that just all we had
Yeah.
no clue what we were doing, but we were doing it, and it was somehow working. And within 6 months or so, I had over 1 million followers on Facebook, and it just kind of continued to compound and grow. So I think that's definitely a big one that I'm extremely grateful for. I think another one is just kind of probably my near death experience in Afghanistan
Mhm.
to um, have a different outlook on life that I've got a lot more to live for. And like that, so that was my third tour. And, I went to Iraq prior and um, I, I was always like, I lived for adventure and I didn't really necessarily had a calling in the military. But once I got blown up and almost killed, I had my son at that point, and I had a lot more to live for. And my why was bigger than just going and trying to figure out let's go on another deployment. That would be great. And so it did kind of shift my identity, and like the military that's not like one defining thing, but if I look at kind of chapters in my life, the military played a significant role because of the like core values that I could like build a community and to build a business that's like focused around not just profit first, but kind of the identity of I said people over profit and I live by it. Like I believe that people identify with people. And so I've always been very forward facing with my brand. And, it creates kind of an ecosystem of buy in that I'm not going to represent something that's not a true identity of me, which ultimately is why I left Shreds. Right. And nothing but love and respect to Arvin. Spoke to him a couple of days ago. But it's more of like all we have at the end of the day is our name. And I've got to make sure that there's alignment there. And so, with my messaging, and you were there for a while, like I didn't want to sit with an alpha stack next to the pole. It's just not organic. And then to have somebody kind of write captions or rewrite it, that's not who I am. I didn't like it. It became frustration. It became like I would rather just not do it at all than to go and do something that kind of it's almost your integrity is in question over a paycheck if I accept it and allow it to happen. And so I just started to look for what are alternatives. And my alternative was betting on me. And
Sure.
that's been a great catalyst where I don't have to rely on other people, but relying on what I can bring to the table. Because think about it this way, like nobody's going to want success more than you. Like Frankie was your hype man, but you put in the work. You dieted nonstop to make that happen. The hours, countless hours in the gym, the dedication to it, the resilience behind not eating pizza and ice cream or anything else that's kind of a weakness. It's tough, man. It's really tough to maintain that physique. And for me, in the fitness industry, and I landed over 50 magazine covers, like Men's Health, Men's Fitness, Muscle and Fitness, Ironman, to try to live that up every day, and maintain kind of that six pack. I wasn't Ulysses. Like I wanted to eat pizza, but you got sponsors that really want you to be in tip top shape year round. And it's
Yep.
just not, you know, I really like the spacing between the Olympia and the Arnold, because that's really where I would, that was my prep time. I didn't do shows. Real, I know you did some, but like mine was more of the fitness modeling stuff,
Yeah.
similar like
Yeah.
Greg Plitt. And so I wanted to kind
Sure.
of like, that was my, and I love having a day, one specific day that's kind of like, this is your hard date to get set up, because um,
Goals and deadlines.
goals and deadlines. I know what that direction and distance is. So if I know that it's going to take away by having a pizza or a couple cheat meals, like how long do I have to recover for that? And then like when we went to Vegas for Olympia, man, it was not, I was grinding nonstop. So it's like we'd be at the expo for all day. And then after that, I would go and do photo shoots left and right, like where everybody else is out partying, going to, I can't remember the name of that club that we all went to, or
I
they
don't know,
did.
but I went. I barely
Yeah,
remember, but I went.
yeah, I can't remember it. Well, man, I was grinding, bro. Like just, and that's kind of always been my mindset. I'm there for a reason. I'm not there to, um,
Yeah.
and I guess in some time, like in some retrospects, more recently, it's been an identity, uh, of like like understanding what I enjoy. Because like as an entrepreneur, your needs are last. Like there's so
Mm.
many other needs above yourself, like your employees, like how much is reliant on you to perform at your peak every single day. Like we had about 140 employees at one point, and 155,000 square feet. I mean, you're talking just rent, insurance, property tax, about $180,000 just in those three variables, not including market expense, not including cost of actual products produced, or anything else. Like, so, we needed to gross a little over $1 million every month to sustain that. So it's, but it become, what I've learned is like over time, you need to do what you love. And I loved entrepreneurship, still do, but you need to like want it, not have to want it over time. There has to be a balance, because there's going to be shit that you do not want to do that you have to do. You just need to man up and do it anyways. Just like you're talking about with cold plunges. Yeah, this sucks, but it's affecting everything else. And this gives me mental clarity. And I know that if I do this, I can take on more. And so like I use the same, hair. What would you call a female barber? Is there still a barber? I don't even know.
Maybe it's just a stylist.
Stylist. Okay, I'll call it a stylist. But she asked me, Colin, what do you enjoy doing for fun, besides working out and spending time with your family? And bro, it's the easiest question on earth that you can identify with, or it should be. I couldn't answer it. I couldn't think of one thing that I enjoy doing besides work, spending time with family and working out. Like, and I did all of that. I had a gym at my work. And so like everything was just, I kind of built my life around that. My hairstylist would come to my work. Like everything just evolved around it, where all I had to do was, um, go to my house and then go back. And I didn't do anything else. All I did was put myself in an environment where that's it. And so I couldn't really, and so up until this year, or this past year, 2023, um, I started like taking on and really self-exploring and understanding like what do I enjoy, because all we have is time, and it's so important that we don't overlook, not just spending time with family, because as an entrepreneur you're not going to work a normal 40-hour work week. It's a whatever it takes mentality, whatever it takes grind, but you have to be able to take, like, have a set aside time and put your mind off of everything else and dedicate over here, and really like take care of yourself, because I know, speaking for me, it's the last thing that you do. Like, fourth quarter was our busiest season, 3 to 4 times revenue. And so you would tell, like, I would get skinny as hell. Like, my face would be sunken. I'd be stressed working, 17, 18 hours a day at the shop. And, but that's every fourth quarter. If you look at Christmas season, I would just be, and then come around like spring, summertime, I'd start getting back in shape and buffing up. And, so priorities kind of shift some. And but I started taking on fishing, and so little things like that. But it's a great question. If you're kind of like, ask yourself that simple question, like, what do you enjoy doing? And that triggered me to analyze myself and what do I enjoy, because you do kind of put yourself last, or at least I did. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to that. That it's something that, you're selfless in a sense, that you're serving other people, and the business and its needs are a priority.
Yeah. Do you feel like that haircut, was it as soon as that haircut happened and the question was asked, did it light bulb hit and you started to make changes, or did you have to mull
No.
on that for a while?
I had to think it over, man, because I didn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's but it did trigger like me to want to at least think about it. Like, it wasn't like night and day difference. I just went out and just started doing stuff, and I'm still in kind of an exploratory phase of what do I enjoy doing.
Hmm.
Like, I'm looking at, I'd love to get, 50 to 75 acres of land and build like a really awesome kind of barnuminium style with some different toys and stuff, but a different type of toys. Not like, because I used to have like a Rolls Royce and a Lamborghini and a Bentley Bentayga all at once, a Maybach Sprinter, all this fancy stuff that like means nothing. And like, I lost everything this past year. Went through a divorce, lost my house, lost the company I'd worked 8 years for, and a lot of those are things outside of your direct control. Control within reason. And there's stuff I could do different. I could have been better. I could have showed up more. Um, but there's things that like life throws at you, and how do you react to that? And so I'm still in a phase of my life where I'm reevaluating and trying to figure out, what does the next 10 years look like, so I could kind of set short-term, mid-term, long-term goals to know the distance, direction without distractions. So I'm resetting, and I think those are it's very common to kind of reassess, and it doesn't happen overnight for a lot of people. It still hasn't happened for me. I still don't know 100%. I'm doing advisory and consulting work, and I've really enjoyed that, man, because vicariously, like when we donated millions of dollars to nonprofits and charity work. I enjoyed it, bro. Like, I loved it. Like, I loved we paid everybody's house payment when COVID hit the next month. People were concerned about just bills in general. And like, I went out, and it's the little things like that that you kind of, if you can do it, it's a blessing to be a blessing for other people. And one of my, I don't know if you've read the 5 love languages, but mine's like random acts of kindness. It's not like words of affirmation. I don't need that. A boy, you're doing a great job. Like, I don't need that. I could do my own thing. But like, when I can help other people, and then the random act of like, somebody didn't clock out at 5 o'clock, even though they were a salary employee and 9 to 5 was their time. They left when they finished their work. I would see that, and I loved it, and I appreciated it so much more. Um, so yeah, that's it's a little bit of all over the place, but that's kind of where I'm at, and kind of evaluating everything.
Sure.
So,
What was the first thing that you sold, product or service, and what was it?
product online, but I guess it was almost like, so it was almost understanding kind of consumer psychology of using and utilizing social media as an influencer or early influencer. Think 12, 13 years ago when we both started.
Mhm.
Like, I think that helped tremendously, because we could jump on a live stream and speak fluently about anything that we were offering or selling. So that helped a lot. So I mean, I guess you could say that's a service provided for other companies. And then when they would continue to pay a premium on renewals, then I knew something else was missing. If I'm making them, if they're renewing at this amount, how much am I actually making them? If they can continue to do that. And so that's when it kind of started shifting identity that, if I'm doing that for them, I could do it for myself too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of led blind faith into wanting to start something, which led me to Red Line Steel, which was like physical home goods that we manufactured and directly fulfilled to customers. And so we had a little over 2.5 million customers across the United States. And
so let's actually dive right into that, because I remember I started in 2017. You started in 16, if I believe.
Yeah,
that's
January
correct.
of 16. Yeah.
And so mine was at the very end of 17. It's about 2 years behind. And I remember when I hit like 100,000 orders, and then I saw where you had posted, and I was like, shit. I was like, I've worked so hard to get here.
Yeah.
And before I exited the company, I ended up like doing 239,000 orders, which for me, I'm like super proud of.
Yeah.
As I think anybody should, right? Yeah. However, how many Shopify orders or how many orders have you sold?
Well, Shopify is one thing. So we used a lot of different facets of it. So,
right.
But
let's just say orders fulfilled.
Probably close to 4 million, and about, I'd say, 15 million, 16 million products that we actually had to produce. So this is like taking a blank sheet of canvas or steel or anything like. So it's to me it's more challenging because
absolutely you're manufacturing and selling.
Yeah.
Versus I just sold. I didn't have to manufacture anything, right? I bought a good that was already packaged and sold it. You got to sell, had to make the product, source the materials, make the product, and then ship it out. So it's like you had twice as much work, if not actually probably way more work than twice as much, because so much more goes into that. Versus I call one guy, and you're like, I've got to call 17 to get one product made, and I sold 16 million products. Like, for those that don't quite fully understand what that means, you'll probably never hear another podcast of somebody that has sold 4 million orders of something. And I've never spoke to somebody that's done that much of one business.
Yeah,
hell, in any of the businesses combined.
Too. This is just for context, guys. This is like a monogram you would see on your front door, faith, hope, love sign, right? So something that is a commodity, and really fourth quarter heavy. So gifting season. And so kind of gamifying it, coming up with creative ways of like being top of mind. So we created a subscription platform. We had 2 different ones. And really like leaning into subscription. We won't think of like Sam's Club where you pay for access into, you get discounts going into the store where you're buying in bulk. So we created $5 Club, and it was very similar to it, where they get an exclusive, basically once a week we would create a product, and for that day it was available for $5 plus the cost of shipping. We were the manufacturer. We kind of, we could get away with that type of margin, and we could still make money doing it that way. Plus, but they're paying $5 a month. And a lot of times people would set it and just never think about it. And then they're paying for access into a private collection. And then the other one is just physical products that are sold and shipped directly to them. And every month it's basically a mystery of what they would receive. This is kind of a good tactic for those to think about that I'd love to give you guys is consider incorporating basically like store credits as incentives. If you call it a gift card, we got in some trouble with attorney generals and different people. So I went through a learning curve myself. But like if it's a store credit, it could basically be the same thing. But the perception of value, let's just say $20 to my website is equivalent to $20 in cash value. And think of it like female math. But it really is. It works. And that was my demo. Women 40 to 65 plus, Christian conservative, married homeowners in the U.S. only. And so what we would do for $5, or I'm sorry, the monthly gift box is we would include a $25 store credit to our website that would have to be redeemed within that month. So if it was, we're about to be in February, they would probably receive some type of Valentine's Day package, and they would get an actual store credit that they would come back. So now they're paying X amount for that package on a recurring basis. And then you're incentivizing them to either spend it, or what I told them is to gift it to somebody else, because there's no better gift than to give when it's not a gifting season. And so I use that as kind of an acquisition approach. Like, there are no minimums. You can go, and this is the same as pulling out $25 that they would have spent with me. So the perception to cancel is like, why would I, when I'm getting, basically paying for what I'm getting in a gift card, plus I'm getting these free other items. And so it's really reframing, and think of this as like, it's a great way for customer win back. Somebody placed an order and they haven't placed an order within X amount of time. Give them an incentive to come back, by offering some type of store credit that's redeemable. So then there's scarcity or FOMO, fear of missing out. And really, it looks like you're doing a bigger favor than because like, if you think about how much did it cost to acquire that customer, and then can we stretch the AOV even higher? And if you're in a product base that's like coffee, something that is a consumable, buying life cycles are very important, because you're depending on the lifetime value. So we have to stretch it, or that dollar for acquisition. You're going to go in. How much does it cost to acquire them? Every year, it's going to go up and up, more than likely, because CPMs constantly go up. So just stretching the LTV by incentivizing through store credits is a great tip that I would do. And then here's another thing: whatever they buy, this should work with any physical product. Is whatever they buy, my first upsell, no matter what they bought, even if it was custom, is buy it again. We know that they liked it, they would not have purchased. So if you offer it again, reframe it. And it could be perfect gift idea. If it's coffee, it could be, a one-time offer for next month. Get next month's supply, boom, 30% off, one time only. And we know that they like that flavor, they got that size. So that's your condition. That's the logic behind it. And we just said, the perfect gift idea for a friend or family member. And if it was around Christmas, the image itself would be like gift wrapped, and somebody would be handing somebody a present. And so we're kind of thinking about the consumer of like, man, that's a good idea. And so that our take rates on our first OTO was always the highest. And then we would go to a downsell, similar in category, whatever they bought. And then the second one was to opt into our subscriptions. Is going to be one of the two subscriptions. So,
yeah, it's got some good nuggets there. It's been a few years since I've been in the e-com game, when it comes to the upsell side of things. And one of the things that I believe that I read was there was a 15% average take rate on buying the exact same product.
yeah, I believe that ours was a little higher, but there were smaller, usually like less than $100 cart values, unless it's fourth quarter. So I definitely agree with that for sure. And upsells, like, pay attention to those, like post-purchase upsells. That's where the money's made. Like, their card's already out, the time to purchase is already there. And like, if you don't mind, Mike, I'd love to kind of give one more great takeaway. If you consider like prospecting or new customer acquisition, most people use, Facebook ads, or Instagram. Like, they are not on Facebook to buy your product. If you're targeting the right demographic and you've identified who that core demographic is, it makes it easier to speak from a copy and creative standpoint. So once you've identify your core avatar. And then the second thing is creating and testing kind of what product, like what should they be, what's going to like draw the most outbound click-through rates. And what we benchmarked was being above 1.5%. So ensuring that the call to action button, basically, because there's a bunch of, did you know a click-through rate, CTR, could also count as a 3-second view? Facebook considers that as a click through, but it's not. So make sure you look at the
So a
metric of
slow
outbound.
reader.
Yeah. So
So a slow
outbound click.
reader counts as a click.
Yeah. So and then like think about if this is acquisition. We know they are not familiar with your brand. They show them one thing. That's what we did, and this is how we really scaled rapidly. Is I would just show that one thing, magnify it, and then take away the header, the footer. We're not going to show them anything but that one product because we know they click the call to action because there's consumer interest. Why show them anything else? They don't need to be overwhelmed with so many other options that they walk away with nothing. And so many times it's like that. If you're a watch guy, you go into Nordstrom's and you pick out, a Nixon, and you like 3 or 4 different ones, and you become stressed out. Like, I really like this one, but I'd love to have this one too. You put them both back and walk out with nothing. But if you only saw that one, it piqued your interest. All I need to do at this point as a direct response marketer is to basically, what are the primary benefits? Why should they buy today? Overcome these core objectives. Scarcity, trust, that's the big thing. Trust and reviews, testimonials, videos. People are kinesthetic, so visually seeing it and hearing it, putting things in like video format that's either even long form on a funnel or a landing page that you can kind of, zone in on. So I think that's like, if people really thought about where they're advertising and ensuring that they're hitting the right, like if they only would have clicked that call to action if there was interest. They would have just kept scrolling on Facebook if there wasn't. And so, when I talked about 1.5% outbound click throughs, that's going to help tremendously on like relevance scores, which is going to impact how much you're spending for the Facebook ad to begin with. And that's going to tell you, is it maybe what you're actually putting from a copy creative and the offer doesn't match, doesn't align with who you're targeting as an avatar. And so before you go and spend and scale a lot of money, look at that as a good benchmark, like within Facebook, to tell you, besides looking at, what are the offline, like outside of Facebook's marketplace, not look at your outbound or look at your add to cart to purchase conversion percentage. Like that's going to tell you, is it a CRO issue? Because like usually there's a 50% reduction. Go to a website, Mike, I'm sure you've seen it, like website to the actual add to cart, to the initiate checkout phase, to the complete purchase. And the more friction you have along the way, the more drop-offs or the more bounce. They hit once, and then they're out. So you'll usually see a 40 to 50% reduction. But if you're looking at it from, if you do that one funnel approach, magnifying that particular product and only showing them that, then you're reducing all of that noise to begin with. And so that void is gone. And so now it's just overcoming those core objectives. And so that's what we did. And we scaled, tremendously. I mean, we had almost 1.1 million orders in a single year. And it's kind of using this approach. And we would target based on categories of focus. So it could be dog or animal related or faith-based. And then we know if this is one of our hero funnels, then this is our hero product. And it made it easy for post-purchase upsells. So if you've got a big catalog of, 100 plus things, or in our case, we had like 2,000 different variants. We would our hero products, there would be 2 or 3 products per category, only 5 categories total. So you're looking at 15 products. And that's it. And we knew if they bought the Curse of Faith sign, but they declined the post-purchase upsell, the hope and love, now I can go in and show them an ad once they receive it, or an email that's directly associated because I know what they purchased to begin with. So, yeah.
There's a lot of high level stuff there, guys. A lot of the high level stuff. So I always like to ask this question is, what's number one thing a customer has taught you?
So we had a customer ascension model, and there's 3 different levels. So we had like a VIP group and it's basically like if they go through a welcome series, so they've opted into a newsletter, initiated checkout, didn't purchase, so they don't have to be a customer, but they're familiar with your brand. But for the most part, these are going to be, anytime I'm sending an email out, this is a secondary objective. That's what I consider as a secondary objective. Maybe they don't want to buy something else, even if it's a transaction email, order receipt, join our VIP group. And so that would kind of be associated with that, to just drive traffic to a group that we can kind of, and so what my takeaway from customers is just to listen. My demographic, I mentioned it, women, 40 to 65 plus, Christian conservative, married homeowners in the US only. That is not me. That's not me at all. So what do I have to do? I need to listen to my avatar and ask them, what do they want? Because it doesn't matter what I think they would want. I'm just going to ask them. And so that was our feedback. That was our consumer feedback loop, is we would put polls out. Here's 4 or 5 different, once we identified a product that they liked, boom, we're going to move on to the next phase. What colors do you like that's associated with this? And there was so much buy-in that they felt that, they were a part of this. And even if they didn't get their exact vote, they knew that we were listening to them, and it made them want to engage and buy because we kept them in the loop. And so then we had an elite group. And so that's based on criteria of X amount of orders spent plus X amount of money that has been basically in transaction lifetime value. And so that would be, they go into their own separate group. And then once per quarter, we had what they call Elite Platinum. And so that would be an enrollment, and they would get a physical product that gets to them, plus a certificate that I sign. They each have their own elite number. And so going those extra, that extra mile. So we had, in our elite group, we had close to 9,000 people. And then our elite platinum was around 800 or so, but we made the criteria harder. And so there's something called the 4% rule. A lot of people are familiar with the 80-20 principle. So you can use it in a lot of different ways, whether that's, 80% new customers versus 20% retention. And that's usually the way that things would work. But then if you think about, but 20% of the retention is bringing in 80% of the top line revenue, because typically you're willing to make a specific offer for first time customers than you would something on retention or remarketing. So if you take only that 80-20 principle, so 20% of the retention, and then you look at that and its own 80-20 cycle of what's the buying frequency, what's the repeat order rate of that top tier 20 into its own, it breaks down into an 80-20. And it ends up being about 4% of your customers end up bringing in about 80% of your revenue. And so identifying your core avatar into such a buy-in. We had what we called elite days, because our elite customers and elite platinum members, they would have access. We did it for 3 years, and they would fly in. So we had at one point, I'd say 250 older women that all flew. We had a couple of guys and husbands, and they made a trip out of it, man. It was such an honor to see people that flew in from Wyoming and California and all over just to be a part of it, and to see, we would walk them through the plant so they could understand this is where the parts are manufactured, laser cut. And then it goes to grind if it looks like this. And then it goes to powder, and then it would go to the fulfillment shells or UV printing. If it's canvas, this is what it would look like. And they really enjoyed, and I enjoyed it, the kind of the buy-in, or because that access isn't in most brands. Most brands, there's not a relatability factor. There's not a lot in common between me, other than being a Christian and a conservative with my avatar, because I'm just not I don't care to, but we would paint, bro. I don't really care to paint, but that's what they wanted to do. We would play bingo. There's activities and stuff that I really didn't care to do outside of that, but I enjoyed my time with them. And so I think just being present and listening to your avatar, listening to your core audience, and kind of making sure that they're our priority, and that'll bring you so much further um, within your business, and they'll tell you exactly what the other people. So then our retention rates just continue to climb because we would listen and constantly invite people into the group and feed that kind of top of funnel. And
Sure.
starting with
Oh,
the
makes sense.
VIPs, then to the elites, and then the elite platinums, and just identifying our core consumer, and then kind of living off of that 4% rule. So,
Man, what is the biggest mistake you've made in business?
hmm, that's a good question. I haven't been asked that. So
I know
it's
the list is long because it is for every entrepreneur.
yeah, there's a
But
lot. You know,
what
the
one that sticks out the most, you go, damn, that was terrible.
um, man, that's tough. So I would say relying on a single source of primary market acquisition and not being
Mm,
diversified is something that people
okay.
get sucked into. That it becomes a challenge. iOS 14 hurt a lot of people. Um, there's
For
impacts that
those,
are going to take.
for those that don't quite understand what he means, basically is like, hey, we're gonna run. Let's just say you run all your traffic just through TikTok and not diversifying your platform and where you're getting customers. So you're only on Twitter, you're only on Facebook and Instagram, you're
Yeah,
only on YouTube, and not diversifying it across.
yeah, and diversification, where I'm kind of clarifying, is either omni-channel advertising, so across but more like, because we were spending about 90% of our market ad spend towards Facebook ads only. And a lot of people do that. And it's challenging to get market share outside of relying on Facebook ads. But what I should have done different is started to really scale the B2B side, the wholesale orders. We were just started launching into Home Depot, and more of like sales channels outside of Shopify. And so kind of that's what I would probably, if I could go back, I would have done a little bit different. And then we started to look into like the corporate signage. So when I started to become like realizing that the market for category growth in home decor globally was only 542.7 million, as opposed to 140 billion within the corporate signage, where I could take the same people, same processes, but now I'm serving a different avatar. That's where I should have shifted more hard focus into, because of how big the category is and how I could, think about also like, if it's corporate signage, this is not an individual's money, it's a company's money. Even if we're the business owners and we don't have partners, we're putting on a corporate card, we're going to write it off. And there's expenses to that you wouldn't typically have within your own. You're not going to have that at your house. Like, you don't
Yeah.
need to buy a tree of life, but your business has to have ADA signs. It has to have
Yeah, and you want it
compliance.
to look good. Like
You want
in
it to
my
look good.
opinion, I've overspent on signage because it was like, well, I'm only going to buy one. I want to make it really great, and I want customers to love it, and I want to enjoy looking at it. And it's not a $50 thing that goes on my wall. Like, I paid $6,000 for some PVC signs,
Yeah.
and that looked great, and I loved them. Everybody loved them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's like you make more money per sell, and the whole side of things, for those who don't know, basically it's one order that typically has reorders in it, but you're dealing with one customer selling 200 in a clip, or 20,000 per sell, versus having to service 20,000 customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Low
So
ticket versus high ticket. Yeah.
right. And so obviously it costs more money to have to deal with more people.
Yeah.
And so if you can figure out how to sell a higher ticket thing or more to one person, it's going to be a lot easier to scale the business. Or it
Yeah.
also helps create more of your guaranteed money coming in each month, because e-com is volatile and wholesale is, for the most part, pretty reliable. It's just getting those relationships built is the hardest part.
Yeah. 100%.
Right.
So I'd say diversification. That's the biggest
Yep.
thing is,
Totally.
yeah.
So what's the number one thing you want people to take away from you, Colin?
I don't know. Like, I'm just a normal dude from Alabama, man. And I think it's just having faith within yourself and going all in, being kind of cognizant of the world around them, look at kind of like market opportunities in a unique sense of what would you want? Is there pain points in your life that you don't really like, you wish there was something better? That's a market opportunity. Like if you can't find a solution for certain things, there's so much out there that actually um, that could be a great business. Um, I mean, when it comes to my takeaway, like it's more of just applying effort and going in 100% and not giving up, being resilient, dealing with resistance because it's going to happen there, and then kind of understanding that setbacks are setups for your future, and everything that you have endured, like it's only going to help you in the long term, because that's where wisdom comes from. Like I didn't, man, dude, honestly, when I hit 100,000 orders, it jumped to 500,000, my goal, and then it jumped to a million, and then from a million went to 10 million as a goal. Didn't you? I skipped the whole 5 million range. Like it's weird. Like when you're goal setting, it becomes, and you celebrate for, at least myself, like I celebrated maybe for 10 minutes, and it's like, what's next? And so you're never truly satisfied. You're always hungry, and it can be a lonely world because once you set out to do it, that was your vision, that was your goal. What's next? It's really kind of self-analyzing what is out there. I love entrepreneurship for that reason. There's never a dull moment. Every single month, whether it's compliance, whether it's cash flow, whether it's opportunities that are shiny objects, like there is always something that is going on that you have to be focused in on, or and then like the impact of today is the result of the last 90 days. So if you lack, like if you go and you had a great month, you're going to go take a few weeks off and celebrate, you come back, it's only going to hurt you long term. And so I think you definitely should celebrate, but understand that like there's a recourse that will take place unless everything is so automated that you can step out and it runs itself identical to the way that you were there.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's
it's
self-analyzing.
The goal to get to. Well, man, where can people find you?
Well, Colin Wayne 1 across all social channels for the most part. They're all verified accounts, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can go to colinwayne.com, and I've got like an easy navigation for all the social handles. But I don't do too much on as much as I used to on the social side.
Sure.
And it's something that like I should put more effort into it to some degree. But at the same time, like it's like, I've been honestly focusing more on my kids and stuff that it's the little things that really make a difference. Because I've had money and I've made millions of dollars, but it's the little thing, like going fishing. It's fun. Like I enjoy those little things. I've got a King Corso, walking him, stuff that's like being present in the moment. It plays a big, so don't be afraid to put down your phone and give yourself some time. So, Mike, it was a pleasure being on.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, brother. Thank you.
My biggest takeaway podcast.